Hello. Today I'm going to be presenting my master's thesis, Post-Reinforcement Pause in Gamblers at Multi-Line Slot Machines. While only 24 of the states have casinos, the United States has over 460 commercial casinos total, which reported combined total revenue of $40 billion for 2017. Even though casinos and gambling contribute large amounts of revenue and employment opportunities, they also bring negative, life-altering consequences for some that gamble. And growing estimates place the lifetime prevalence of problem gambling between 1 and 7% of the population, with the most commonly accepted figure to be 3% of the population. Post-reinforcement pause is recorded as the time between the delivery of an outcome, such as a win, a loss, or a loss disguised as a win, or LDW, and the start of the next spin or bet. Current evidence supports that post-reinforcement pause appears due to the presence of a delay between the continuation of play, placing the subsequent bet, and the eventual delivery of the reinforcer, which is a winning outcome when it comes to gambling. The term addiction in general refers to the long-standing pattern of behavior that seems uncontrolled or under-controlled for the individual. It's often repetitive in nature, and additionally, it seems to have some sense of harmfulness to the individual. A common characteristic of addiction is preoccupation with the source of the addiction. Gambling addiction has common similarities to other addictions, such as caffeine or substance addictions. For example, the withdrawal symptoms. Problem gambling refers to any gambling behavior which adversely or negatively affects significant areas of a person's life, whether it be their mental health, their physical health. It could be employment, family relationships, or financial or legal status. Pathological gambling occurs when an individual has had at least 4 or more gambling problems throughout their life. Some studies show that it may be more common for pathological gamblers to also display disorders that are grouped in the DSM as obsessive-compulsive disorders, such as compulsive buying, compulsive sexual behavior, attention deficit disorder. It's not uncommon to see people with gambling problems or addictions experience repeated and unsuccessful attempts to control or stop gambling. In the present study, it replicates and extends previous research on post-reinforcement pause in slot machine gambling and provides discussion around the clinical utility of such findings for the prevention of problem gambling. Understanding how various aspects of gambling, such as reinforcement schedules, post-reinforcement pause, LDWs, and the reinforcing nature of gambling, understanding how they all interact, how they function, and how they contribute to the enticing and addictive pastime through the study of previous research and the current study can provide insight into the many variables that are or could be responsible for gambling addictions. The present study took place in casinos and establishments with regulated video slot machines, which is a change from previous literature and previous research. Previous studies on slot machine gambling used computers or simulated slot machines. The result of a study done by Cunningham, Williams et al. 2000 indicates that future screening for problem gambling should have a broader base among drug users. This was due to the findings that indicated that problem gamblers compared to other individuals tended to be male, African American. They tended to be recruited from drug treatment centers. Generally, they had antisocial personality disorders and were commonly often dependent on illegal drugs. With incidences of disordered gambling on the rise, researchers are exploring how gambling and behavior coincide with one another. Research has found that behavior can become sensitive to gambling events, which can help explain why some gamblers may lose control over their gambling. Generally, people repeat and continue behaviors that they know to produce desirable consequences for them, which is known as reinforcement. People tend to avoid effortful behaviors as often as possible and match effort to the reinforcement that they receive. Common personalities of gamblers tend to include biases that lead to poor judgments of probabilities or hypothetical situations and constructs. Hypothetical constructs that are often had by gamblers can be defined as engaging in decisions that have no real impact on the probability or the likelihood of their outcome, of them winning or anything. There's also the illusion of control, which deals with having the expecting mentality that the gambler's chances of success are way greater than the actual probability of them winning. In the present study, patterns of behavior were examined as the length of the post-reinforcement pause after each type of outcome, and the types of outcomes are a win, a loss, and LDW, for gamblers at multi-line video slot machines. Multi-line video slot machines were used since single-line slot machines don't produce LDWs. In the present study, post-reinforcement pause was measured as the time from when the reels stopped spinning to when the gambler placed a bet. A bet consisted of the subject pressing the bet button or pulling the lever that resulted in the movement of the slot machine reels. The specific amount of each bet wasn't recorded during each spin, but we did observe the bet amount prior to each spin just to be able to evaluate which type of outcome resulted following the bet. With multi-line slot machines, gamblers have the opportunity to place different bets on a multitude of lines. This increases the number of lines that the gambler bets on. However, it doesn't necessarily correlate, and it's not proportional to increasing the chances of the winning outcome. And since multi-line slot machines allow for multiple play lines, this allows gamblers to increase their overall speed of betting. And while this can increase wages, if there is a winning outcome, it more often leads to gamblers just losing wages at a way increased rate. These are the data for the repeated measures one-way ANOVA results. On the y-axis is the post-reinforcement pause in seconds, and the outcome type on the x-axis. Solid bars indicate the mean post-reinforcement pause in seconds for each outcome type, and whiskers indicate standard deviation for each outcome type. The results of the current study indicated that gamblers at multi-line slot machines found wins compared to losses in LDWs to be more reinforcing, as indicated by the longer post-reinforcement pause length. These are the data for the participants' post-reinforcement pause for each outcome type. The graph displays the post-reinforcement pause in seconds for each participant after a win, after a loss, and after a loss disguised as a win. While the present study had a limited sample size and no demographic information, we only knew that they had to be 21 years old because that was what the laws regulate for the casinos and for video gambling. It still does provide good insight into gambling behavior, though. Further research into gambling and comorbid disorders such as alcoholism or tobacco dependency could be used to maybe screen for gambling addictions or an increased risk for someone developing a gambling addiction. Furthermore, future research on the effects of post-reinforcement pause and the reinforcing value of a win, a loss, and an LDW should be looked at to include the rules that gamblers make up or tell themselves while gambling, that have no basis in reality or fact. Gamblers could be taught to distinguish between a winning outcome and an LDW, which in turn could help make them better able to be more aware of their personal gambling behavior, and possibly more accurately identify when they're getting true wins versus LDWs. Further research into other variables that contribute to the development of gambling addictions and gambling disorders needs to be evaluated in order to come up with prevention techniques or treatment methods. The results of the current study indicate that gamblers at multi-line slot machines found wins compared to losses and losses disguised as wins to be more reinforcing, which was indicated by the longer post-reinforcement pause length that occurred after winning outcomes. Problem gambling is an ever-present and increasing epidemic that is cultivated and caused by numerous variables, the reinforcing values of wins, losses, and losses disguised as wins, which is indicated by the post-reinforcement pause length in the present study, and in previous studies, contributes to the development of gambling disorders.